Drone attacks, exploding vehicles, food poisoning attempts, and snipers. The world's most wanted man escapes them all. But how does he do it? Today, we're unveiling the obsessive ways Vladimir Putin spends billions to avoid assassination. From limousines equipped with anti-aircraft missiles to his own private army. Stay till the end to have your mind blown. Putin's private army. With targets aimed at his back by some of the world's most powerful countries, Vladimir Putin has actually been relaxing at home quite a bit since his invasion of Ukraine. With enemies like these, how can he do it? It starts with the notorious leader's private army of 340,000 soldiers. No, this is not the Russian army. It's literally an army just for Putin that stands at the ready to protect him against any threat at any time. But why would one man need the protection of an entire army? Putin assembled this private army as a response to the growing power of the Federal Protective Service, or FSO for short. The FSO is basically a modern-day version of the KGB with a multi-billion-dollar annual budget. Led by the nefarious Viktor Zolotov, who was sanctioned by the European Union in 2019 due to several human rights violations, the FSO is tasked with the protection of high-ranking state officials, including the leader of the Kremlin. Formed 5 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, this 50,000-strong agency responds directly to the president. Think of it as Russia's version of the Secret Service on steroids. Although the FSO is supposed to protect Putin, one of the numerous attempts on his life was made by a former FSO hitman who attempted to assassinate Putin with a sniper rifle during his visit to the UK in 2003. Realizing he had enemies within his own protective service, Putin assembled one of the largest personal armies in history to protect himself from future attacks. Of course, maintaining a personal military of this size doesn't come cheap, costing Russian taxpayers $2.5 billion a year. The SBP. Wherever the controversial autocrat travels, the complex task of protecting Putin is assigned to his personal guard, the SBP. Operating as an agency within the FSO, the SBP has special permission from the Russian government to eliminate anyone they deem a threat to Putin's safety. Now, you would think that having previous experience in law enforcement would be a requirement to be part of the president's personal guard, but this is not the case in Putin's SBP. Policemen are never accepted because of their training to simply incapacitate attackers. Putin only wants stone-cold killers. Because of this, the SBP hires highly skilled operational psychologists who can recognize and eliminate threats just by reading the expression on a person's face. Part of the SBP's role is to meticulously plan the president's visits when he travels. They are deployed to the location of a future visit months before the president even arrives to identify potential threats, from criminal activity and social unrest to possible natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes. After the schedule for the visit is coordinated with local authorities, the SBP inspects their leaders' future accommodations, making sure that everything is working perfectly to avoid needing repairmen or technicians to access the president's living quarters, and to make sure that the pillows are comfy enough for Mr. Putin's head. Right before he arrives, the SBP's engineers install jammers to block any remote detonation signals close to the president. The surveillance team's equipment monitors all smartphones and devices close to the president to control any suspicious activity. While this might seem like a blatant privacy violation, Putin doesn't care. Russian state law allows his security teams to legally monitor device activity, conduct body searches, and seize suspicious vehicles if there's even a hint of a threat. But don't worry, it's unlikely that the SBP will ever need to read your chats or review your search history. Well, hopefully not. Once there, Putin is protected by 4 rings of highly trained security teams, each with its own specific role. The outermost layer consists of multiple sniper rifle teams, strategically positioned on the rooftops of surrounding buildings. Making any hasty movements near the president is a surefire way to get a red dot or two pointed at your head. With the firepower these guys are packing, that's probably not a good idea. These lethal shooters are armed with Orsis T-500 precision rifles, which fire a pinky-sized 250-grain bullet at nearly 3,000 feet per second. While only a few of these shooters are positioned in plain sight, several others are concealed behind windows and inside buildings, providing excellent long-range protection for Mr. Putin. The president's third ring of protection consists of dozens of armed security guards that form a large circle around the perimeter of the crowd, preventing anyone untrustworthy from getting too close for comfort. And as if getting past these guards and flying under the radar of the snipers wasn't impossible enough, imagine your every move being closely observed by covert security guards that look just like regular civilians. This is exactly what the second ring of Putin's protection team does. because these armed and combat-ready professionals are trained to read crowds for signs of potentially dangerous behavior. Just looking at them the wrong way could result in you being eliminated. Personal bodyguards. Now for the first ring of Putin's security detail. These are the last people on Earth you'd ever want to mess with. These guys are probably the first thing that comes to mind when you think of a nefarious Russian dictator's first line of defense. Decked out in dark suits, sunglasses, earpieces, and suitcases, these men are the president's last resort if a serious threat somehow ever makes it past all the other layers of defense. These top-notch physical specimens are all younger than 35, fluent in 5 different languages, and have a deep understanding of international politics in order to be aware of potential threats when Putin travels. How do they defend him, you ask? Almost everything on these security guards can be turned into a shield or weapon. If you thought they carried umbrellas just to keep the president from getting wet, think again. These umbrellas are actually made of Kevlar, which can protect the president against bullets in the event of a shootout, an accessory that would even make James Bond envious. But that's not all. These guards are armed with 9mm Gurza pistols that can shoot up to 40 rounds per minute and pierce heavy armor. And remember the suitcases? If you thought they brought those along to carry paperwork, you are sadly mistaken. These briefcases double as bulletproof shields, creating an impenetrable defense around the Russian president. Putin's transportation. If all else fails, which has never happened, Putin's last resort would be to escape in his humble $192 million Ora Senat armored limousine. A bunker on wheels capable of withstanding sniper bullets, chemical gas, landmines, and even small-scale missile attacks. During his preparations to invade Ukraine, Putin decided that he might need a bit more protection on the road than his Mercedes-Benz S600 Pullman Guard could offer. Thus, he decided to go with Oris, every Soviet-era Russian dictator's go-to limo provider. Equipped with state-of-the-art internal communications equipment, this mobile command center also features closed-circuit television screens to keep the president's security team aware of the moving bunker's surroundings at all times, even when the windows are closed. If you ever get the chance to see Putin's limo, you'll also see his heavy-duty motorcade following closely behind. Consisting of up to 10 armored vehicles, the motorcade is operated by the president's highly trained special operation units, armed with grenade launchers, sniper rifles, anti-missile systems, and AK-47s. As if all this weren't enough, Putin's limo also has a built-in emergency exit in the back of the car, just in case anything goes wrong. Of course, Putin doesn't just limit himself to ground travel. When the job demands it, Putin's not afraid to go airborne in one of his personal $8 million Mi-8 helicopters. These are newer, upgraded versions of Soviet-era attack helicopters that feature armored plating around the cockpit and fuel tanks, flare and chafe systems to divert incoming missiles, and an anti-tank guided missile system, a state-of-the-art blend of luxury and safety. For longer trips, Putin travels on his luxurious $504 million IL-96-300PU airliner, which is often called the Russian version of Air Force One. This flying palace is integrated with next-gen communications technology, allowing the most important man in Russia to coordinate troop movements, speak with army officials, or even remotely launch a full-scale nuclear attack from the comfort of its white and gold leather seats. Not one to neglect physical fitness, Putin also had a personal gym built inside the aircraft, which he frequently uses on longer trips. But don't let the lavish bedroom, luxurious amenities, and elegant furniture fool you. When he travels in his private plane, Putin is anything but vulnerable. This flying bunker was carefully engineered to endure the intense strain of hardcore maneuvers and emergency landings. For security reasons, the plane's defense features haven't been publicly disclosed, but it's rumored that the aircraft also contains a secret escape capsule, which would allow Putin to evacuate in the event of an emergency. Food testers. You might think that air assaults and explosives are the most effective assassination methods, but the most subtle and common way that controversial leaders are taken out is actually with food poisoning. As you probably guessed, when it comes to food, there's nobody quite as paranoid as Vladimir Putin. After his invasion of Ukraine, Putin replaced all of his personal staff for fear that he might be poisoned and took his food safety protocol to the next level. You may be thinking that hiring a food tester is an outdated practice reserved for medieval monarchs, but this Russian president begs to differ. Although food testers have been used by high-profile political leaders all over the world, Putin is the only president so far that has hired a full-time food tester to ensure his safety, even when the food is prepared by his personal chef. And with that, now you know how the world's most wanted man has somehow avoided assassination. With constant threats to his life, it's safe to assume that Putin will continue to invest in his multi-billion-dollar defense strategy. Subscribe to Lux Vault to stay in the loop.